Okay, we're gonna do our Camping as My Therapy insert. If you watch this and you bought the whole tier tray, I think this is really the hardest piece to paint, so you should be good after watching this. I actually already started painting that part, so just ignore that. Let's start with, let's just start right with the brown. So, your brown is obviously going to be inside your little cup. Now get your baby wipe out and make sure that it is still damp. If it took you a while to get to your kit, or if it's dried out, then you need to either get some water in your hand and squeeze it around so it's not dripping but it is damp, or get a water bottle and just mist your baby wipe with water. So for the brown pieces, which is these logs, the camping therapy, and these logs, you want your baby wipe. So we're just gonna dip the end in brown, and then I kind of just wipe off the excess, and then I'm just going to paint the areas that I want brown. So as far as this piece, these logs sit on top of it, so I actually went a little bit higher than I really needed to. We really only needed to get the ends, so I'll just cover that with red. I'm not worried about it. And then I've already painted this one, but let me show you. Obviously, if you want less brown, then on the clean edge, go back and wipe it off. I wanted this one to be lighter so that this one stands out more. Now for these letters, Camping is My Therapy. I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but I had kind of like an ombre look. So I'm going to paint everything with this baby wipe first, just to give it that stained look. You don't need to go as fast as me, but you also don't have to take forever either, because we're going to cover a lot of it again. And then just be extra careful. I'm going fast, but I'm pressing light. So just be careful with these little pieces that are connected, that you're not like putting a lot of pressure and breaking that connection. Okay, almost there. Okay, so that was our first coat. I guess technically I didn't need to use the baby wipe for these logs because I'm actually going over it again with the wedge. Get a wedge and then dip it in the brown. Remember, the baby wipe gives it like a really light stained look, whereas the wedge is going to be really depositing the paint down. So it's going to be a lot more pigmented. So I am going to go ahead and mainly stick around these edge pieces that are going to show. It's mainly these little pieces. So that is all the area I'm going to do with the wedge for this piece. I'm not going to paint over this piece. I want to keep that one light. Now to do the ombre look. I'm going to set my letters up because how I want it to look is I want it to be darker. For the word camping, I want it to be darker on top and go to the light. And then therapy, I want darker on the bottom and go up as light. So you do however you want. So since I'm doing the camping first, I'm going to dip, dab off the excess, and then I'm going to focus on the top third of this word. And then I'm going to very lightly press as I start to go about 2/3 of the way down. I'm not going to add any more paint on. You want to work somewhat quickly, just so that it doesn't dry too much. And then you can see as to how that makes an ombre look. Same thing, dip, dab, and then as I work my way down, I am barely tapping the letters so that hardly anything gets deposited. And it's just a nice blending instead of a harsh line like I just did right there, which you can always just touch it up with your baby wipe or your finger. Okay, now for therapy, I'm going to do the same thing, but opposite. I'm gonna do the bottom and then dab my way up. And ever so lightly. And that makes it a nice ombre look. Okay, and that is that for the ombre. I'm actually going to wipe this a little bit with my wipe because I did too much of a, I had too much paint on my, and that's okay. And that is blended much better. Okay, let's do our flame next. Everything else is going to be pretty, like you'll know, it's just straightforward. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna paint down to here red. So as you can see, the only thing that's really showing is the ends of these two pieces. So I'm going to actually go farther than where I went with the brown because I accidentally got too far up on that. And I'm only doing one coat, and I'll show you why in just a second. I like to pinch my wedge to create this circular shape, and it helps make that little section easier. And then I'm going to set this off to the side, not back in the paint. I'm going to get my yellow, dip and dab, and then I'm going to paint my flame. I am going to, if this is you, wait for this to dry and do a second coat. But since I am trying to show you and don't want to literally watch paint dry, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it while it's wet. So now that it's the full coat that I would want it to be, I'm gonna set this wedge off to the side. I'm going to get this red wedge that I have already used, dab it to get most of that red off. And while this is still wet, I'm going to focus up here. Let me get more of that red off. I'm going to focus at the top, barely tap up and down and work my way down. If you get most of the red off and the yellow is still wet and you're barely tapping, it's just gonna give it a nice, like it's gonna blend. So that's kind of like an orangey ombre. And then I'm going to take the same wedge, dip it back in the red, go ahead and do my second coat on this flame. And then while this is still wet, I'm now going to take this yellow, dab more off, and then hit the flames so that it's kind of like the opposite ombre. And you can see how I focus mainly on the edges and the flames. So the middle is still that red color. So this is what it ends up looking like. Now, you can keep reworking it. If you don't like how it blended, you can, once it's dry, or heck, you can even do it when it's a little bit damp, you can take your sandpaper and lightly brush it, or you can always take your baby wipe and ever so lightly kind of try to blend it. Just remember that the baby wipe is actually going to bring paint up. So you might have to just keep adding a little bit more and working till you're happy with it. But just remember, it doesn't have to look perfect. So that's gonna end up looking like that. And there was something else I wanted to mention about this. Oh, yes. Let's say you've reworked it and you're frustrated because you've already mixed these. You can always rinse these out and then wait until they're mostly dry, or just squeeze them really good. And you can always paint again. And that is that tutorial. I'm gonna go ahead and paint this white. You know the drill. If you get paint in the shiplap line, just use your toothpick while the paint is still wet to clear it out. I'm painting these letters, I think green is what I'm gonna do, because I think that's what I did with my tier tray and I want it to match. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put them together. So if you have any other questions, you need anything else shown in detail, then please reach out and I'd be happy to give you more direction.